Our next contestant is Miss Miku Pancoast, and she will be questioning whether sexism still poses a threat in classical musicians. Please welcome Miku.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to speak at the Women's Federation for World Peace. It's an honor to be here. My name is Miku Pancoast, and I am a musician. I received my master's at the Royal College of Music in London, and I play the violin and the viola. Before I moved to London, I lived in Belgium, where I started my musical training at the age of 6. And this is where my story begins. I would like to share with you my first orchestral concert experience. My parents took me to see the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra in Germany. It was my first concert ever, and I didn't quite know what to expect. I was very, very excited. And it's one of the world's greatest orchestras. I remember sitting up at the top of the concert hall, looking down at an older crowd, and the stage was empty. I dangled my feet from the seats, and I didn't quite know what to anticipate, really. As I watched the orchestra file onto the stage, I saw a large group of musicians, but, to my surprise, most of whom were male. They resumed their positions in the principal seats, like the brass, the percussion, the woodwind, the concertmaster seat, as well as the conductor's podium. The considerably fewer women would have been dotted around in the strings or perhaps in the harp section. At a young, impressionable age, I left with the impression that male musicians were the orchestra's natural leaders. Men perform quite literally on the loudest instruments and, on a greater scale, have the loudest voice in society. Today, I would like to share with you the issue of imbalance in my profession. I'm sure mine is not the only one that experiences this still. Classical music is divided into various sectors. So there's chamber music, opera, composition, conducting, and orchestral playing. Change in gender imbalance can start in classical music, as it sees itself as the custodian of culture. Classical music sees itself as a high art. Therefore, the music world can set the tone for gender roles in broader society, because culture matters. Women should be encouraged and allowed the same leadership positions as men, and whether it's in music or whether it's in society. Music has such a massive impact on everyone. It's always consumed, and therefore change can become, there can be greater potential for positive change in society. We can compare this to the current allegations regarding Harvey Weinstein, a Hollywood producer who has been accused of sexually harassing female actors. Culturally, film is similar to the way music influences society, so the values of these industries can rub off on society. Gender imbalance is not new. This has been apparent hundreds of years ago. There were few women, like Clara Schumann, Fanny Mendelssohn, and Anna Maria Mozart. You might even recognize the last one being Mozart. These were talented women, but they were not made famous, while their brothers and husbands were. These women were overshadowed. They never received the opportunities nor the training that their male counterparts had. And still to this day, women appear less in roles of composers and conductors than men. It's still an issue. Marin Alsop is a famous female conductor from the United States. And she was the first female to conduct the last night of the BBC Proms in 2013. The BBC Proms being one of the country's largest cultural events at the Royal Albert Hall. She said, would you believe, that it was shocking that there would still be a first for any woman in the 21st century. The modern viewpoint from some male conductors have given us the right to believe that women are not welcome in their profession. This is made particularly clear by two young world-class male musicians, and this is the first one being Bruno Montevani. And would you believe he is a headmaster of the Paris Conservatoire, that's a specialist school in Paris. And he said that conducting is physically too demanding for women. In the same year, Russian conductor Vasily Petrenko chimed in, saying that a girl on the podium might distract male musicians. The conductor or the maestro is a supreme leader. He's afforded a godlike status. He's almost invariably male, emphasizing that the profession of conducting is especially stuck in gender bias. A conductor like Maren Alsop has shown us how women can be strong in that profession and successful. So women are faced with a dilemma. And what is the solution? This is where appearance plays a role in the lives of young female musicians. Appearance may help some women succeed over artistic integrity. Men would never have to face this kind of dilemma. Unfortunately, like women in pop music, some women in classical music also choose to wear tighter clothing, shorter skirts, lower tops. Classical music, if of any form of music, should be a profession based on merit and merit alone. There is a clear imbalance in gender expectation for musicians. Men do not have to go through this. So, is this where the high art has come? With these cultural biases being still an issue, orchestras back in the 1970s and 80s developed the blind auditions. Now you're thinking, what are blind auditions? They're quite literally where you stand behind a curtain, it's a candidate, female or male, and they cannot wear high heels, and they cannot speak, so as to conceal gender. They are not allowed to, so orchestras have seen an intake of more female players since, but the proportion of female musicians in leading orchestras still lags. Vienna Philharmonic, another world-class orchestra, in 1997, would you believe, took off its ban for female players, where 6 of 138 players were women. I looked on their website leading up to the speech, and I recounted the list. There are 13 now. 13 out of 138 musicians are women. So that makes 9% of the orchestra women. And also, I played in an orchestra project this week, so I couldn't help, look at where the gender was proportioned. And I found that 9 out of 13 subsections of the orchestra had male leaders, including the conductor and the male concerto soloist. So we think, how about women in leadership positions? There are 61 full-member orchestras of the Association of British Orchestras. Between them, they cover 100 titled conductors' roles. Can you believe that only 3 are occupied by women? Clearly, blind auditions are not the panacea. Women still face cultural barriers that cannot be concealed by a curtain. This creates the cultural bias before candidates reach the audition room. We can see in our society that there are principles from legislations, such as the Gender Equality Act, that have not created equal pay. Women players are usually concentrated in the string sections and men in the brass. Cultural and social stereotypes still sway parents and teachers to encourage their children to play specific instruments, such as the girly instruments like violin and flute, like myself, or the strong, boyish instruments such as brass, trumpet, trombones. We need to address culture and break gender bias. We need to make changes for girls to be educated in whatever instrument they would like. We need to go from the grassroots level of music and project higher changes for women in leadership positions, not only in classical music, but also in greater society. This will make our cultural leaders, the musicians, and the world of the high arts responsible custodians of culture, and will help smooth the barriers between gender expectations and gender imbalances on larger scales of society. To end my speech, I would like for all of us to go back in time and imagine yourself, as myself, as a little child, Or imagine you have a daughter, and you're sitting in that concert hall watching the Berlin Philharmonic. And as the lights dim and the applause stops, you can close your eyes and hear a spectrum of notes. And what do you hear? It's simply music. It's not based on cultural expectation nor gender. It's just based on art itself and on music itself. With this thought, let's imagine a world where women could have every opportunity and strength to pursue their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you, Miku. Just got a question. Oh, yeah, just keep you on the stage.
My apologies.
That's okay. You talked about female conductors.
Yes.
Could you elaborate a little bit more? Do they advocate other women to?
Yes, they do.
Promoting them to come to the forefront?
Sure, that's a really good question. Marin Alsop is one of many female conductors. I only used her because she was, in such a big cultural event such as the prom. She was the first lady conductor to be there. But she advocates for educating teenagers and children at a younger age to begin conducting through courses and through school programs, through El Sistema as well as other programs. So it is addressed, and her other female colleagues do the same. Yeah. Thank you.